Out front now, Mark Epstein, the brother of Jeffrey Epstein. And Mark, from what you know, from what you saw, how close was your brother to Donald Trump?
They were very close. They were good friends. Jeffrey used to sometimes tell me things that Donald said that were funny. I know Donald was in Jeff's office a lot back in the 90s. It's documented that Donald flew on Jeff's plane a number of times. I don't know if they ever checked, but I know Jeff flew on Donald's plane also. I don't know if they've ever looked at his flight logs. And they were good friends. I mean, I flew on Jeff's plane. It's known I was on a plane in 1999, flying up from Florida, and Donald was with us. And we were all joking around. They were good friends.
So, tell me about that. I know there was something on that flight that you remember about your brother and Trump. What is it?
Well, it was a funny thing when we were talking, and stick a pin in that. A couple weeks or a week before that flight, I was talking to Jeffrey, and he told me that he was talking to Donald, and he asked Donald, "How come you sleep with so many married women?" And Donald's answer was, "Because it's so wrong." Now, amongst guys, it was a funny line. And then when we were on the plane a week or two later, Jeffrey asked Donald the same question. I know he did that for my benefit so that I could hear Donald say it. And Jeffrey asked him, "How come you sleep with so many married women?" And Donald said, "Because it's so wrong." Now, it's a funny line, but the answer is not the poignant part of the story here. The question is the poignant part, because for Jeffrey to ask him that question, number one, he would have to know that Donald slept with a lot of married women, so and he probably got that information from Donald. And
it
also,
implies a confidence.
That's not the kind of question you ask a casual acquaintance. How come you slept with so many married women? That's a question you ask a good friend that you can get away with asking those kind of questions.
The Epstein files, documents that hold the darkest crimes of Jeffrey Epstein, still haven't been fully released, despite years of public demand and scandal. And somehow, Donald Trump seems to have steered the conversation away, making these explosive records fade from the spotlight. But what exactly is hidden in those files? What secrets do they hold? And how many of the people we once respected will be exposed in the process? Are we ready to face the truth behind the power? The Jeffrey Epstein case continues to captivate public attention, with the so-called Epstein files at the heart of ongoing demands for transparency. These files, encompassing court documents, depositions, and investigative records related to Epstein's sex trafficking operation, have been the subject of intense scrutiny. Victims, their advocates, and even public figures like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis have called for the full release of these records, particularly grand jury documents from Epstein's earlier Florida investigations. However, the government's response has often been evasive or incomplete. For instance, Attorney General Pam Bondi, under pressure from both sides of the political spectrum, has claimed that the files contain little new information and cited national security concerns for heavy redactions, frustrating victims and fueling skepticism. Virginia Gifford, an Epstein abuse survivor, has publicly demanded the release of these files, only to face bureaucratic resistance, leaving victims feeling powerless and dismissed. Why do these delays persist? And what might the government be shielding from public view? The government's handling of the Epstein files has raised eyebrows due to a series of peculiar actions that seem to defy calls for openness. Despite President Donald Trump's campaign promise to release the files, his administration has resisted full disclosure, with Bondi's Justice Department stating in July 2025 that no client list exists and that Epstein's death was a suicide. Conclusions that have only deepened public distrust. The recent transfer of Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's convicted associate, to a minimum security facility in Texas, shortly after her interviews with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, adds another layer of suspicion. Was this move a reward for cooperation, or does it signal something more opaque? The Justice Department's reluctance to unseal grand jury transcripts fully, despite requests from both victims and lawmakers, prompts questions about whether powerful interests are being protected. Could the government's hesitance be tied to the potential exposure of influential figures? Share your thoughts. What might be at stake for those in power? The Epstein files are believed to contain references to numerous high-profile individuals, with former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton among the most prominent names. The House Oversight Committee, led by Rep. James Comer, issued subpoenas in August 2025 for both Clintons to testify about their connections to Epstein, a move that underscores the potential significance of the files. Comer's letters highlight Bill Clinton's documented trips on Epstein's private plane in 2002 and 2003, as well as allegations of his presence at an intimate dinner with Maxwell in 2014, long after her role in Epstein's crimes was public knowledge. These subpoenas, alongside demands for testimony from former FBI directors James Comey and Robert Mueller and multiple former attorneys general, suggest that the files may hold details about a broader network of influential figures. The fact that such high-profile individuals are being summoned raises a critical question. What information in the Epstein files could be so damning that it warrants such extensive efforts to keep it under wraps? Epstein's files is essentially a complex structure of records, a compilation of various types of documents designed to capture, store, and safeguard the full scope of Jeffrey Epstein's network and activities. It includes flight logs, financial records, correspondence, surveillance data, and physical evidence seized from his properties. But one of the most notable and talked about components is the Little Black Book, Epstein's personal contact directory. What's striking is that there isn't just one, but two different Little Black Books, one dated around 2005 and another from 1997. Each serves as a crucial piece in reconstructing the social and power network Epstein cultivated over decades. The 2004-2005 Little Black Book, a meticulously organized, black-bound directory seized during a 2005 police raid of Jeffrey Epstein's New York townhouse, stands as a haunting artifact of his vast network. Found after his initial arrest in Florida, this physical Rolodex-style contact list, showing signs of frequent use, contained 1971 names with detailed information, phone numbers, addresses, emails, and even personal assistants. Alfredo Rodriguez, Epstein's house manager, took the book from the Palm Beach residence, calling it the Holy Grail of the investigation in an FBI affidavit. Attempting to sell it for $50,000 to an undercover agent, Rodriguez faced 18 months in prison for obstruction of justice, having warned that Epstein intended to destroy it. The FBI digitized the book, preserving its contents for investigators across jurisdictions. Its alphabetized entries, designed for staff use, reveal a sprawling web of connections, raising questions about its true purpose. Was this merely a social directory, or did it serve a darker role in Epstein's operations? Explore the digitized version online. What secrets might its pages hold? The book's contents paint a vivid picture of Epstein's world, blending high-profile figures with obscure associates. Names like former presidents Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, Alan Dershowitz, Bill Richardson, Ted Kennedy, Alec Baldwin, Dustin Hoffman, Courtney Love, Mick Jagger, Phil Collins, Barbara Walters, David Koch, and Elie Wiesel appear alongside contacts for hotels, restaurants, and Epstein's properties, like Little St. James and Zorro Ranch. Notably, 24 entries under Masseuse, 1 labeled Oogly Back Up, and 8 Exercise People, hint at Epstein's exploitive recruitment tactics, aligning with victim testimonies. Circled names, including Ghislaine Maxwell, Sarah Kellen, and Jean-Luc Brunel, and 5 highlighted financial and industrial figures, remain unexplained, fueling speculation about their significance. Were they priority contacts, or marked for another purpose? The mix of celebrities, staff, and potential victims, with some entries redacted to protect underage individuals, underscores the book's complexity. Dig into the unredacted version. What patterns emerge from these connections? The book's journey into the public eye began with Gawker's 2015 publication of a redacted version, igniting media frenzy and tabloid speculation. Outlets like the New York Post and Vanity Fair dissected names, though many listed, like business associates or socialites, had no proven ties to Epstein's crimes, sparking ethical debates about privacy. In 2019, an unredacted version surfaced on the online forums, amplifying conspiracy theories about a client list. Despite official denials that such a list exists, the book became a searchable resource for researchers. In 2024, Alexander Historical Auctions valued it at $110,000 to $2,000, requiring bidders to sign confidentiality agreements. A digital facsimile edition for Kindle, released on July 27, 2025, cemented its status as an infamous artifact. In legal proceedings, the book served as critical evidence, first in Epstein's 2006 Florida case and later in Ghislaine Maxwell's 2021 trial, where it was admitted as Government Exhibit 52. Prosecutors used it to map Epstein's network, identifying potential witnesses, though most names lack direct criminal links. Its overlap with flight logs for Epstein's Lolita Express, listing passengers like Clinton and Dershowitz, and references in Virginia Giuffre's 2017 lawsuit against Maxwell highlight its role in tracing Epstein's connections. The FBI noted 94 names with check marks and 5 highlighted, but their purpose remains unclear. The government's reluctance to fully unredact the book, citing national security, has sparked questions about what it conceals. Could sensitive diplomatic or investigative ties be at stake? The book's blend of prominent figures, staff, and cryptic annotations continues to drive demands for transparency. Examine court filings from Maxwell's trial. What else might the book reveal about Epstein's inner circle? In the late 1990s, perhaps 1997, Denise Ondeko was walking along Fifth Avenue in New York City, somewhere between 54th Street and a nearby block, when she noticed a small black book lying on the sidewalk. She picked it up, flipped through a few pages, and was struck by what she saw: names like Kennedy, Rockefeller, and Trump. Her first reaction was, damn, finding it bizarre to see such a collection of powerful names in one place. At the time, she had no idea who Jeffrey Epstein was and decided to keep the book purely as a New York City artifact, never suspecting it might be a piece of criminal evidence. Denise kept the book for years, unaware of its real significance. In 2019, as news of Epstein's arrest and sex trafficking scandal dominated headlines, she rediscovered the book and realized its connection. She reached out to the New York Times tip line and even to Rachel Maddow, but received no response. By late November 2019, needing money to fix her car brakes, she decided to sell it on eBay with a mix of practicality and defiance. Thinking, Jeffrey Epstein, you paid for my brakes. The listing went public for anyone to see. Many might have assumed it was fake, but Christopher Halali took the risk and bought it. When the package arrived, he was careful not to leave fingerprints, DNA, or hair on it. Opening it for the first time, he said it felt like being Indiana Jones. But in his hands was a dark book, filled with a lot of suffering and a lot of evil, some would say. Halali quickly packaged the book for forensic analysis and handed it over to a team of journalists. Reporters interviewed Denise extensively and found her story credible, confirming the book's origin wasn't random. For Halali, if the book somehow turned out to be fake, it would still be pretty awesome forgery. But either way, he believed it was important evidence that deserved to be examined. In 2021, forensic document examiners authenticated it as Epstein's, confirming details like phone numbers, alarm codes, and modem lines tied to his properties and relatives. Dated to October 1997, the book predates much of the public scrutiny Epstein later faced, making it a unique snapshot of his connections before his crimes became widely known. Its 389 printed entries, many marked with check marks or highlighted in yellow, raise questions about the relationships Epstein cultivated. What was the purpose of this meticulously kept book, and why was it discarded so carelessly? Among the names in the 1997 Little Black Book are figures who later became prominent in politics, media, and business, offering clues to Epstein's early reach. Notable entries include Susanna Arca, a close friend of Melania Trump and linked to the New York Jets ownership, as well as Christina Greeven, spouse of journalist Chris Cuomo. The book also lists Carl Icahn, who served as a special advisor to Donald Trump during his presidency, and Jill Harth, who later accused Trump of assault. These names, alongside 221 others not previously connected to Epstein, suggest a sprawling network that spanned industries and social spheres. 94 entries bear checkmarks, and 5 are highlighted in yellow, described as belonging to well-recognized financial and industrial figures. The presence of 2 entries in what appears to be childlike handwriting, potentially Epstein's, adds a chilling personal touch, hinting at his direct involvement in curating this network. Unlike later records, this book captures a less scrutinized period of Epstein's life, making its limited public release all the more tantalizing. Why was it so carefully compiled, only to be abandoned? Dig into the auction records from 2024. Could the bidders know something we don't? The book's journey from a Manhattan sidewalk to a high-stakes auction underscores its enigmatic allure. In May 2024, Alexander Historical Auctions offered it for sale, requiring bidders to submit a banker's letter and adhere to strict confidentiality. The auction process allowed the top 2 bidders to make final offers by June, with the consignor reserving the right to decline or move to a public auction in July. Unlike later documents tied to Epstein, this book has not been fully released to the public, leaving much of its contents shrouded in secrecy. Its limited exposure fuels speculation about what sensitive information it might hold. Could the checkmarks and highlights indicate key players in Epstein's operations, or were they merely organizational notes? The fact that such a detailed record was lost and only rediscovered decades later prompts further questions about how Epstein managed his connections, and whether this was an intentional discard or a rare lapse. Another scrutinized pieces in Epstein's files are his flight logs, meticulous records of who traveled on his private planes, when they flew, and where they went. The flight logs from Jeffrey Epstein's private planes, a critical component of the so-called Epstein files, offer a detailed record of the financier's travels and the high-profile individuals who accompanied him. These logs, spanning from 1991 to 2006, document flight dates, departure and arrival points, and passenger names, providing a window into Epstein's extensive network. Kept by Chief Pilot David Rogers and corroborated by pilot Lawrence Visosky, the logs were meticulously maintained, with Rogers signing each page. They cover thousands of flights on Epstein's Boeing 727, nicknamed the Lolita Express, and other aircraft, revealing destinations like Palm Beach, New York, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and international locations such as the Azores. The logs' significance lies in their ability to map Epstein's movements and associations, raising questions about the nature of these trips. Were these flights merely social gatherings, or did they serve a darker purpose? The process of uncovering these flight logs began with law enforcement actions tied to Epstein's legal troubles. In 2005, during a raid on Epstein's Palm Beach mansion, authorities seized evidence that included early flight records, though these were not immediately publicized. The logs gained prominence during the 2006 Florida investigation, which examined allegations of sex trafficking. However, it was not until Epstein's 2019 arrest on federal sex trafficking charges that the logs became a focal point, with additional records recovered from searches of his New York and U.S. Virgin Islands properties. The FBI's 2019 investigation inventoried a vast trove of evidence, including 40 computers, 26 storage drives, and over 300 gigabytes of data, some of which contained flight log details. These records were further exposed during Ghislaine Max's sex trafficking trial, where prosecutors introduced 236 pages of lightly redacted logs, unredacted twice at the defense's request before public release. Why did it take so long for these logs to surface fully, and what might still be withheld? Dig into the trial documents. Could they reveal more about the recovery process? Look the Black Books. The flight logs' contents are striking for the breadth of notable figures listed as passengers, though their presence does not imply wrongdoing. Among them, former President Bill Clinton appears multiple times between 2002 and 2003, often on international trips, including a 2002 flight with actor Kevin Spacey and supermodel Naomi Campbell from JFK to the Azores. Former President Donald Trump is recorded on at least 8 flights, primarily between Palm Beach and Teterboro, New Jersey, including trips in 1993 around the birth of his daughter Tiffany, accompanied by Epstein and Maxwell. Other names include attorney Alan Dershowitz, who flew several times between 1998 and 2005, former Senator George Mitchell, who traveled his wife on multiple occasions from 1994 to 1998, and violinist Itzhak Perlman, who took flights to Michigan in 1992 and 1993. Prince Andrew appears twice in 1999, and a 1998 entry notes Epstein meeting Sarah Ferguson and her children on the ground. The logs also list Eva Anderson Dubin, a former Epstein girlfriend, dozens of times, and unnamed passengers like one female or two females, as testified by Rogers. What do these diverse passenger lists suggest about Epstein's influence? The public release of the flight logs has been a contentious process, marked by partial disclosures and accusations of obfuscation. In February 2025, the Justice Department, under Attorney General Pam Bondi, released 341 pages of Epstein-related documents, including 236 pages of flight logs, as part of a PAYS disclosure. However, 118 pages were duplicative, and much of the material had been public since 2015 through lawsuits and Maxwell's trial. The logs were accompanied by a redacted contact book and a Masseuse list, but the lack of new revelations disappointed many, with Bondi herself alleging the FBI withheld thousands of additional pages. A 3-page FBI evidence index from 2019, released in 2025, hinted at unreleased logs, including a Little St. James logbook and boat trip records, which could detail visitors to Epstein's private island. The Justice Department's claim that no client list exists and that further disclosures are unwarranted has fueled speculation about hidden records. Why are some logs still unreleased, and what might they reveal about island visitors? Look into the DOJ's 2025 release. What gaps remain in the public record? The inclusion of logs from Little St. James and boat trips suggests a deeper layer of activity tied to Epstein's private island, where much of his alleged misconduct occurred. The presence of handwritten notes, photo albums, and wiretap records in the FBI's evidence index points to a broader investigative scope that remains partially obscured. The logs, detailed passenger lists, while not evidence of criminality, highlight Epstein's access to power, making their redactions and selective releases all the more suspicious. Could these logs, if fully unredacted, expose more about Epstein's network than authorities are willing to share? The Justice Department's insistence on protecting victim identities and national security adds complexity. Why might such protections extend to passenger names? The unreleased portions of Jeffrey Epstein's files, often referred to as the Another Epstein files, a sprawling collection of documents from federal investigations into his trafficking activities, remain largely inaccessible, with significant portions withheld despite public and legal pressure. Among these are approximately 10, 371 pages from an 571-page investigation spanning 2006 to 2011, withheld under Freedom of Information Act or FOI requests between 2017 and 2020. These documents include a wide range of materials, information from confidential sources, letters to then U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta, subpoenas issued to MySpace, agents' handwritten notes, grand jury subpoenas, intelligence analyses, correspondence with the FBI's Victim Assistance Program, and communications with foreign government agencies. Additionally, the files contain a large volume of subpoenaed phone records, bank records, and 55 interview summaries, known as 302s, with witnesses, victims, and investigative targets, with only Alfredo Rodriguez's name disclosed among them. The sheer breadth of these materials suggests a complex web of evidence that could shed light on Epstein's operations and connections. Yet their continued secrecy raises questions about what remains hidden. Legal barriers have significantly hindered the release of these files, creating a formidable obstacle to transparency. Many documents are sealed court records, requiring judicial approval for disclosure, which courts have been reluctant to grant. Grand jury materials, protected under Rule 6 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure, are particularly difficult to access due to strict confidentiality laws governing such proceedings. Some files are believed to contain classified intelligence, potentially involving foreign actors or national security concerns, adding another layer of restriction. Redactions to protect the identities of victims and witnesses further complicate public access, as authorities cite privacy concerns to justify withholding large swaths of material. These barriers, while rooted in legal precedent, have fueled speculation that they serve to shield powerful individuals or sensitive information, leaving much of the public in the dark about the full scope of Epstein's activities. Rumors surrounding these unreleased files have proliferated, driven by their inaccessibility and the high-profile nature of Epstein's associates. One persistent speculation is that the files contain a definitive client list naming powerful individuals who participated in or knew about Epstein's illicit activities. Despite the Justice Department's assertion in July 2025 that no such list exists, the idea persists, fueled by the presence of prominent names like Bill Clinton and Donald Trump in already released flight logs and contact books. Another rumor suggests the files include explicit visual evidence, such as videos or images from Epstein's properties, potentially capturing influential figures in compromising situations. The mention of over 10,000 downloaded videos and images in the FBI's evidence index, some described as illegal material, adds weight to these claims, though no specifics have been confirmed. The notion of such recordings has led to theories that Epstein operated a blackmail scheme, leveraging his connections to extort or influence elites, though no concrete evidence has surfaced to support this. The unreleased files' connection to Little St. James has sparked particularly dark speculation. The island, where much of Epstein's alleged abuse occurred, is central to rumors about a logbook detailing visitors, which could include well-known figures not yet publicly linked to Epstein. Boat trip records, mentioned in the FBI's 2019 Evidence Index, are believed to hold clues about who traveled to the island and when, potentially revealing a wider circle of associates. Some speculate these logs could implicate individuals who avoided Epstein's planes, thus evading the released flight logs. The inclusion of blueprints and photographs of the island in the unreleased files further fuels theories about hidden rooms or surveillance systems designed to document illicit activities. The lack of transparency around these records has led to whispers that authorities are protecting powerful individuals, possibly due to national security concerns or fear of public backlash. Another layer of rumor centers on the wiretap recordings of Maxwell's phone, which remain under wraps. These intercepts, described in the FBI's evidence index, are thought to contain conversations that could reveal the extent of Maxwell's role in Epstein's network and name other co-conspirators. Speculation abounds that these recordings might include discussions with high-profile figures or instructions related to Epstein's operations, offering a direct glimpse into their inner workings. The Justice Department's decision to withhold these recordings, citing victim privacy and ongoing investigations, has led to theories that contain politically sensitive information too explosive for public release. Some believe the recordings could clarify whether Maxwell's recent transfer to a minimum security facility in 2025 was tied to her cooperation with authorities, though no evidence confirms this. The unreleased files also include physical evidence, such as massage tables, cash, and unusual items like female busts and a stuffed dog, which have sparked their own set of rumors. The mention of $17,000 in cash and multiple massage tables in the FBI's index has led to speculation about their use in Epstein's alleged massage schemes, where victims were coerced into sexual acts. The oddity of items like female body part busts has fueled theories about Epstein's personal proclivities or their potential role in his property's decor, possibly as a psychological tool. Rumors also swirl around the financial documents, with some suggesting they could trace payments to victims or associates, revealing a money trail that implicates others. The Justice Department's refusal to release these items, citing privacy and legal constraints, has only deepened suspicions that they hold incriminating details about uncharged individuals. The persistent secrecy surrounding the unreleased Epstein files has given rise to broader conspiracy theories. Some speculate that the government's reluctance to disclose the full archive stems from pressure by influential figures named in the documents, who may wield enough power to suppress their release. Others believe the files could expose systemic failures in law enforcement, such as why Epstein's 2008 plea deal was so lenient. The Justice Department's July 2025 memo, which argued that further disclosures are unwarranted, has done little to quell these rumors, especially given earlier promises of transparency. The mention of thousands of pages, still under review, as noted by Attorney General Pam Bondi, suggests a deliberate slow walking of the process, leading to theories that the files could destabilize political or social elites if fully revealed. The combination of digital, physical, and documentary evidence in the unreleased files continues to drive speculation about a hidden truth too significant to be made public. Although the full scope of the Epstein files has never been made public, and in many cases appears to have been deliberately concealed, we can still piece together the missing parts by examining Epstein's other assets. These properties weren't just places he owned, they were extensions of his operation, holding both the physical and psychological tools that reveal his methods. Through them, we can begin to understand why Epstein created and maintained such a vast collection of sensitive material as a weapon of influence, a safeguard, and a means of control over the powerful figures and organizations he was connected to. Among these assets, one stands out as a critical window into his world: Epstein's New York City townhouse, which appears to have been far more than a residence. It was, by all indications, a hub for hosting, recording, and securing the leverage that kept his empire intact. The interior layout of Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan townhouse was a carefully curated environment designed not just for luxury, but for control, observation, and the collection of potentially compromising information. At the heart of the residence, a striking centerpiece dominated the atrium, a sculpture or installation depicting a woman in a white wedding gown, clinging to or hanging from a rope. The imagery, blending innocence with distress, suggested a deliberate psychological message, eroticizing danger and signaling Epstein's view of women as objects to be controlled. This piece, prominently placed where every visitor would see it upon entering, set an unsettling tone, hinting at the power dynamics that permeated the home. The atrium's role as a focal point was amplified by the decor along the entryway, where rows of prosthetic eyeballs lined the walls. These eerie symbols conveyed a sense of constant surveillance, as if Epstein were proclaiming his ability to see everything, reinforcing the idea that no action in his home went unnoticed. The combination of these elements created an atmosphere of dominance, designed to unsettle guests and assert Epstein's control from the moment they stepped inside. The townhouse's third floor housed Epstein's personal suite, a private enclave that included his bedroom, an infamous massage room, and multiple adjoining bathrooms, all arranged to ensure seclusion and restricted access. In the bedroom, a high-quality, sizable surveillance camera was mounted in a corner, its lens trained directly on the bed, with another camera positioned in an adjacent room. This setup was not about protecting valuables, but about capturing intimate activities, suggesting a calculated intent to record private moments. The massage room, where many of Epstein's documented abuses occurred, was equally telling. Adorned with paintings of naked women and equipped with a large silver ball and chain, as well as shelves stocked with lubricant, the room was clearly designed for illicit purposes. Notably, no obvious cameras were visible in the massage room, unlike the guest bedrooms, which raises the possibility of hidden surveillance devices. Victim accounts suggest that cameras were present in every room, implying that Epstein likely used concealed equipment to maintain an illusion of safety while secretly recording. This discrepancy between overt and covert surveillance points to a sophisticated system aimed at gathering compromising material without arousing suspicion. The guest bedrooms, particularly one on the third floor, further underscored Epstein's surveillance strategy. This sparsely furnished room, containing little more than a bed, had a prominent camera pointed directly at the sleeping area. Unlike typical security setups, which prioritize entrances or areas with valuable items, this placement was unusual and deliberate, indicating a focus on capturing private interactions. The absence of visible cameras in other areas of the home, such as the dining spaces or hallways, as seen in available photographs, suggests that Epstein relied on hidden devices to maintain comprehensive monitoring. The overt cameras in the bedrooms served as a bold statement, while the lack of visible equipment elsewhere could have been a strategic choice to lull guests into a false sense of privacy. This dual approach, combining conspicuous and concealed surveillance, aligned with the goal of collecting blackmail material, as the high-quality cameras were capable of producing clear, usable footage. The setup implies that Epstein's home was a controlled environment where guests, particularly influential ones, could be recorded in compromising situations, potentially for leverage or extortion. Epstein's dining and hosting spaces were another critical element of the townhouse's layout, designed to draw in a wide array of powerful individuals. These areas hosted illustrious guests, including politicians, scientists, and even royalty, as noted in a letter from Woody Allen. Initially, the meals served were described as meager, prompting guest complaints, but later evolved into lavish buffet-style or catered affairs, suggesting that hospitality was secondary to Epstein's true aim: gathering influential people in a controlled setting. The dining spaces were less about creating a welcoming atmosphere and more about providing a stage for Epstein to observe and interact with his guests, potentially under surveillance. The presence of cameras in nearby bedrooms and the likelihood of hidden devices throughout the home indicates that these gatherings could have served as opportunities to collect compromising information, either through recorded interactions or by luring guests into private areas where cameras were active. The focus on hosting such a diverse and elite group points to a calculated effort to build a network that could be exploited, with the home's surveillance system as a key tool. The townhouse was adorned with a trophy wall of influence, featuring photographs, letters, and memorabilia from high-profile figures, displayed prominently in public spaces like the living room and hallways. Among these was a striking portrait of Bill Clinton in a blue dress and red heels, pointing at the viewer, created by an artist rumored, but unconfirmed, to have painted a George W. Bush piece with a paper plane and fallen blocks. The Clinton painting, hung prominently in the Manhattan property, was interpreted as an inside joke, a power statement, or a form of humiliation, reflecting Epstein's penchant for showcasing his connections in a provocative manner. Other images included Epstein with figures like Fidel Castro, Pope John Paul II, Richard Branson, and Donald Trump, while letters from individuals like Woody Allen and Ehud Barak were preserved, some describing Epstein as a collector of people. This curated display served to flaunt his access to power, reinforcing the theme of control and observation. The memorabilia, combined with the surveillance system, suggests that Epstein used his home to both document and advertise his influence, possibly to intimidate or manipulate guests by signaling his reach. The study, another key area of the townhouse, contained an embalmed tiger, an unusual and imposing decoration that projected power, strength, or menace. This choice, like the prosthetic eyeballs and the bride sculpture, contributed to the psychological messaging woven throughout the home's decor. These elements were not hidden, but placed where guests would encounter them, amplifying the sense of being watched and controlled. The bride sculpture, with its connotations of innocence trapped in danger, and the eyeballs, symbolizing omnipresent observation, were complemented by the study's tiger, which added a layer of predatory dominance. Together, these features created an environment where visitors were subtly, or not so subtly, reminded of Epstein's authority. The surveillance cameras, both visible and likely hidden, were the backbone of this setup, enabling Epstein to gather compromising material that could be used for blackmail. The overt nature of some cameras, contrasted with the absence of visible devices in critical areas like the massage room, suggests a deliberate strategy to balance overt intimidation with covert recording, ensuring that guests remained unaware of the full extent of their exposure. The cumulative effect of the townhouse's layout and decor was a space engineered for surveillance and manipulation. The strategic placement of cameras, particularly in private areas like bedrooms, combined with the likelihood of hidden devices, indicates that Epstein's home was designed to capture sensitive information. The psychological impact of the decor, eyeballs, a distressed bride, an embalmed tiger, reinforced this control, creating an environment where guests were under constant scrutiny, whether they realized it or not. The public display of photographs and letters from powerful figures served as both a boast and a warning, signaling Epstein's ability to collect and leverage relationships. The dining spaces, hosting elite guests, were likely extensions of this surveillance network, drawing influential individuals into a setting where their actions could be monitored. The absence of visible cameras in the massage room, where many abuses occurred, suggests a reliance on hidden technology to maintain secrecy while documenting activities. This carefully orchestrated setup points to a singular purpose: gathering material that could be used to exert influence or extract concessions, aligning with the theory that Epstein's home was a hub for collecting blackmail material. Once more time, among the most prominent individuals visible in the home was Bill Clinton, captured in a striking photograph with Epstein. Their elbows touched, their eyes locked, and both wore genuine smiles, suggesting a level of intimacy that contradicted Clinton's claim of being merely a casual acquaintance. The image, displayed in a public area of the townhouse, hinted at a close relationship forged during shared travels, possibly during trips to Africa or Europe between 2002 and 2003, as suggested by a bracelet Clinton wore, a keepsake from his African visits. Another photo showed Clinton receiving a massage from Talia Davies, a woman who accused Epstein of assault, though she made no allegations against Clinton. This image, alongside one of Clinton with his arm draped over Ghislaine Maxwell's shoulder, underscored his deep ties to Epstein's inner circle. Maxwell's presence at Chelsea Clinton's wedding further cemented this connection, painting a picture of familiarity that extended beyond casual encounters. The townhouse's decor was a curated wall of influence, with photographs of other high-profile figures prominently displayed in reception areas and hallways. Fidel Castro, Pope John Paul II, Richard Branson, and Prince Andrew appeared in these images, each carefully placed to impress or intimidate visitors. The photo of Epstein with Castro, a polarizing global figure, suggested access to international power, while the image with Pope John Paul II, linked to the Catholic Church's child abuse cover-up scandals, added a layer of controversy. Branson, a billionaire entrepreneur, and Prince Andrew, a British royal, were also featured, with Andrew described as part of Epstein's close-knit group, unlikely to be a blackmail target due to their friendship. These images were not hidden in private albums, but showcased, where guests would immediately notice them, serving as psychological signals of Epstein's reach. The public display of such connections implied a deliberate strategy to flaunt his network, possibly to draw in new influential figures or to subtly pressure those already in his orbit. Letters and notes from notable figures further amplified the townhouse's narrative of power. A letter from Ehud Barak, former Israeli prime minister, described Epstein as a collector of people, noting that he knew everything about everyone while remaining a closed book himself. This observation, preserved among Epstein's memorabilia, reinforced the idea that his relationships were strategic, designed to gather leverage. Another letter from Woody Allen, a neighbor and apparent friend, detailed dinner parties at the townhouse, attended by a diverse array of guests, politicians, scientists, journalists, entertainers, and even royalty. Allen's descriptions, likening the home to Castle Dracula, suggested an awareness of Epstein's predatory nature. Yet his tone indicated a camaraderie that placed him among Epstein's trusted allies, not a target for blackmail. These letters, displayed alongside photographs, created a layered narrative of connection and obligation, hinting that Epstein used his home to both document and advertise his influence over a wide-ranging elite. Bill Gates was another figure prominently linked to the townhouse through a letter signed "I was wrong," accompanied by a dollar bill, suggesting a lost bet or a deeper obligation. Displayed near the photo collection, this item fueled speculation that Epstein sought to exploit Gates, with reports from 2019 claiming Epstein boasted of having dirt on tech moguls, describing them as the craziest in their debauchery. Unlike Clinton, Andrew, and Allen, who were seen as close allies, Gates was likely viewed as a potential blackmail target, someone whose wealth and influence made him vulnerable to Epstein's schemes. The letter's placement in a public area of the home, rather than a private archive, suggested it was meant to be seen, perhaps as a subtle warning to other guests about Epstein's ability to extract concessions. The contrast between the warm, intimate photos of Clinton and the more transactional nature of Gates's letter highlighted Epstein's dual approach, cultivating friendships with some while targeting others for leverage. The diversity of Epstein's guests, as noted by Allen, extended beyond heads of state to include intellectuals like Noam Chomsky, whose presence in a photograph was surprising given his reputation as a left-wing critic. This eclectic mix, politicians, scientists, entertainers, and royalty, indicated Epstein's strategy of casting a wide net across sectors to maximize his influence. The photos, often staged in public spaces, were not merely mementos but tools to project power, impressing new visitors and reminding existing ones of his reach. The absence of certain figures in these displays was telling. Those Epstein most wanted to blackmail may have had their images kept private, suggesting a selective curation where allies like Clinton and Andrew were showcased, while potential targets were less prominently featured. This strategic display aligned with Epstein's reputation as a collector of people, using his home as a psychological stage to assert dominance. The relationships captured in these images and letters were often forged or reinforced during international trips, providing private settings for Epstein to bond with or compromise his guests. Clinton's bracelet and physical appearance in the photo with Epstein suggested a specific time frame, likely tied to their shared travels to Africa, Europe, or Thailand between 2002 and 2003. Virginia Gifford's account of Ghislaine Maxwell piloting a helicopter to ferry Clinton and Epstein to Little St. James, Epstein's private island, added another layer of intrigue. Though Gifford witnessed no wrongdoing by Clinton, his denial of ever visiting the island raised questions about why he would dispute an innocent trip. The intimate body language in photos, Clinton's arm around Maxwell, or his relaxed pose with Epstein, contradicted public denials of closeness, suggesting these displays were meant to signal a deeper connection to visitors. The presence of Maxwell, a key figure in Epstein's network, in both photos and Gifford's account, further tied Clinton to the inner circle, reinforcing the townhouse's role as a hub for these relationships. Jeffrey Epstein's network of relationships was a carefully orchestrated web, divided into two distinct groups: close allies and potential blackmail targets, each serving a unique purpose in his pursuit of power and influence. The first group, described as friends and allies, consisted of individuals with whom Epstein maintained long-term, intimate connections. These relationships were marked by shared indulgent activities, often described as debauchery, and a mutual trust that made them valuable as partners rather than targets for exploitation. These allies appeared frequently alongside Epstein at events, displaying open and friendly body language in photographs. Figures like Bill Clinton, who shared multiple trips and intimate moments with Epstein, often with Ghislaine Maxwell present at family events, exemplified this group. Similarly, Prince Andrew's documented closeness, evident through repeated appearances together, solidified his role as a trusted ally. Woody Allen, a neighbor who likened Epstein's home to a Gothic castle, yet remained a regular guest, also fit this mold, maintaining a socially amicable bond. These allies were not seen as immediate targets for blackmail, as their loyalty bolstered Epstein's social standing. In contrast, the second group, referred to as marks or blackmail targets, included individuals Epstein viewed as exploitable for their wealth, power, or social status. These relationships lacked the deep personal connection of the ally group and were instead transactional, with Epstein positioning himself to gather compromising information. The criteria for selecting these targets hinged on their vulnerability to reputational damage, financial capacity to pay for silence, and influence in spheres Epstein sought to penetrate. As mentioned, Bill Gates was reportedly seen as a prime target, with Epstein allegedly boasting about possessing damaging information on tech industry figures, whom he viewed as prone to reckless behavior. Unlike the allies, these marks were not spared from Epstein's schemes, as their value lay in the potential for financial or political gain through coercion. Epstein's division of relationships was strategic, driven by a clear set of criteria that balanced personal closeness with utility. The level of intimacy determined whether someone was an ally, safe from immediate exploitation, or a mark ripe for manipulation. The value of a relationship to Epstein's broader network of power was equally critical. Those who could open doors to new influential circles were prioritized as allies, while those with exploitable assets were marked for leverage. The risk of blackmailing a target was weighed against their potential to yield influence or resources, with Epstein carefully assessing how easily they could be compromised by sensitive material he might collect. This calculated approach ensured that allies strengthened his social facade, while marks provided tangible benefits, whether through direct payments or access to elite networks. The interplay between these groups was dynamic, with a notable risk of role reversal. Even allies, initially shielded by their closeness, could become targets if their relationship with Epstein soared or if he perceived a threat. This fluidity meant that Epstein collected compromising information on nearly everyone in his orbit, allies included, as a precaution against betrayal. The potential for allies to shift into marks explains the meticulous documentation of interactions, ensuring Epstein always held leverage. For instance, while Clinton's frequent appearances suggested a strong alliance, the possibility of Epstein retaining sensitive material as insurance highlights the precarious nature of these bonds. Epstein's events were carefully curated to blur the lines between allies and marks, creating an environment where both groups mingled. These gatherings, often lavish parties, featured trusted allies whose presence lent credibility, making marks feel secure among familiar, powerful faces. This social mask was a critical tool, allowing Epstein to present himself as a legitimate member of the elite, easing the suspicions of newcomers. Allies like Clinton or Prince Andrew served as a shield, their prominence reassuring marks that Epstein's world was safe and prestigious. Meanwhile, marks were subtly drawn into compromising situations, unaware of the calculated dynamics at play. The strategic use of marks extended beyond immediate gains, with some held in a state of ongoing leverage for long-term benefits. While certain targets might be exploited once for quick financial or political advantage, others were kept under Epstein's influence to secure introductions to new figures or access to major institutions. This long-game approach amplified Epstein's reach, turning marks into unwitting facilitators of his network's expansion. The delicate balance of maintaining allies while exploiting marks underscores the sophistication of Epstein's methods, where every relationship was a calculated step toward greater power. The Epstein files and the individuals named in them could be seen as part of an information network, built to serve a specific organization or nation, one in which Epstein himself, as the architect of that network, may have been acting as an intelligence asset. Jeffrey Epstein's ascent from a modest background to a figure of immense wealth and influence raises questions about potential backing from powerful entities, possibly intelligence networks, that enabled his rapid rise and ability to evade accountability. Born to working-class parents in Brooklyn in 1953, Epstein's early life showed no signs of the extraordinary connections he would later forge. His trajectory from a high school math teacher to a Wall Street player, despite lacking a college degree, suggests external support. After being fired from Dalton School for poor performance, Epstein landed a role at Bear Stearns through a student's parent, a friend of CEO Alan Greenberg. Within 4 years, he rose from junior assistant to limited partner, an unusual feat for someone with his credentials. However, an SEC investigation into insider trading forced his exit, yet he faced no legal consequences, hinting at possible protection. His subsequent involvement with Towers Financial Corporation, a debt collection agency, revealed to be a massive Ponzi scheme, further muddies the waters. While his partner, Stephen Hoffenberg, served nearly 20 years in prison, Epstein walked away unscathed, despite allegations of deep involvement. This pattern of escaping accountability suggests he may have had influential backers shielding him from prosecution. The Department of Justice's investigation into these claims further complicates the story. Their findings found no evidence that Epstein was an intelligence asset or received special treatment due to such ties. Instead, they attributed his lenient plea deal to poor judgment on Acosta's part, a conclusion that starkly contrasts with the sensational narrative pushed by some media outlets. This official stance has done little to quell speculation, as independent investigators and online communities frequently revisit Acosta's alleged statement as a cornerstone of their theories. Podcasts and articles within these circles often frame the comment as an implicit confirmation of Epstein's intelligence role, despite its reliance on hearsay. The repeated amplification of the quote, often without acknowledging its secondhand nature, has cemented its place in public discourse, even as the Justice Department's report dismisses it. The context of the 2017 transition period adds another layer of intrigue. Trump's team was under pressure to assemble a cabinet amid intense public and media scrutiny, making vetting interviews highly sensitive. If Acosta's claim about Epstein's intelligence ties was accurate, the transition team's decision to drop the issue could reflect a strategic choice to avoid public controversy or entanglement with classified matters. Some analysts argue that the team's willingness to overlook the Epstein case suggests they believed, or were led to believe, that his connections were too sensitive to probe. Yet the absence of concrete evidence, relying solely on Ward's reporting and a single anonymous source, creates a significant gap between public speculation and official records. This tension between journalistic accounts and the Justice Department's findings continues to drive debate, with the truth obscured by conflicting narratives and a lack of definitive proof. The most enduring lesson from the Epstein case isn't just about the crimes themselves. It's about what happens when information is locked away from the public. The decision to keep the Epstein files sealed has become more than a legal or investigative matter. It's a communications crisis. Every day those documents remain hidden, they feed suspicion, deepen cynicism, and chip away at public trust in the government. People start to believe not just that the system fails, but that it actively protects the powerful at the expense of justice. Once that belief takes root, it's nearly impossible to undo. But here's the uncomfortable truth: what if those files were released? What if, buried in those names and details, were confirmations that some of the most influential political figures in the United States had ties to Epstein's network? The consequences wouldn't stop at individual careers. We're talking about political parties fractured from within, legislative agendas collapsing, diplomatic relationships strained, and the entire country thrown into a legitimacy crisis. The media would erupt, the internet would spiral, and trust, already fragile, could shatter completely. That's the paradox. Transparency is a cornerstone of democracy. Yet full transparency here might trigger political and social chaos, unlike anything modern America has experienced. It raises a question that has no easy answer. Does the public have an absolute right to know, even if the truth could destabilize the nation? Or is there a point where protecting the system takes priority over exposing every fact? The Epstein case forces us to confront this tension between justice and stability. It challenges us to think about whether we're ready for the fallout if the veil is pulled back completely. And maybe the real question isn't whether the government is ready to release those files, it's whether the American people are prepared to handle what's inside them. Are we?